I'd like to talk to you guys today about constructive criticism and signs and what you can do to pick up on that and run with them. You know, a lot of people will say that they don't like constructive criticism and they don't see the signs, and they're probably going to say, "What do you mean signs?" Now, this is what I feel like and what I know from my experience is you have signs in your life every day, and once you start noticing them, you will notice that they get stronger and stronger, pointing you in the right direction or the direction you need to go in. Some people choose to ignore it. Some people, now the constructive criticism is key in bettering yourself as a human being and being able to fully understand what you're doing wrong. A lot of people don't like that either. But if you follow these and watch them, and watch the signs and follow the constructive criticism, you will go pretty far. But the thing is, most people, like I said, most people don't want it. And they know that it's the right thing to do, and they know that what people are telling them is the truth, but they don't. Something in them just gets mad and upset about it. It's like, oh, and then they just turn it into an argument. They turn it into something that it shouldn't be, just because their pride and ego's hurt over it. And it's like, it's true though. Like, why are you upset when you know it's the truth? It's kind of silly and counterproductive. So at this point, like I said, I've been helping people around my area. I've been helping people one-on-one in groups. And come January, I'm going to be going and helping people on a much wider scale. And I have noticed, I kind of use these videos to fine-tune what I'm doing, to pick up when I'm the flaws, the errors in my ways before I go to a bigger scale to do it, And like I said, I'm not ever going to hold anyone's hand, but I do need to take into account that everyone not even can't, but doesn't want to, and not only doesn't want to, but won't be able to handle things the way I do and the way I did and what helped me. So, it's a learning experience for me as well. Anytime you transition into something new, doesn't matter if you're a great talker, it doesn't matter how charismatic you are, it doesn't matter how good you are with words. You need to find a balance. You need to fine-tune what you're saying, what you're doing, to be able to help people, because you can't just blindly go out and talk to 300, 400, 500 people, and then stumble around or come across as a douche. And because all it takes is one or two wrong things, saying one or two wrong things, and you're rubbing people the wrong way, and they don't want to have anything to do with you. They don't want to watch you. They shut you out at that point. And I fully understand that. So, but going back to the signs and the constructive criticism, and I will give you signs and not signs. I will give you an example of a couple things of constructive criticism, and I'll also give you a breakdown of these signs. So we're going to do the signs first. Now, once you start noticing these signs and notice that something's pointing you in the right direction, and you notice that it happens more frequently, you need to really, really, really be aware of this, because this is what is going to change your whole life. And what I mean by these signs are, and I'll give you examples of these signs, but let me give you a breakdown of what I feel is what these signs are, okay? So, I have talked about free will before. I have talked about all this stuff before. But basically what I feel, and in my experience, is when you are born, you do have free will to an extent. But I do think that for the most part, everything that you do, where you're supposed to go, what you're supposed to do in life, has been predetermined. It's prophesized, right? So you can take, and like I said, I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to use a highway as an example, right? Like, you have a highway. You start out at one destination, you're supposed to go to this destination. Now, you can get off on the exits. You can get off and, like, let's say you can get off and go eat. You can choose what you're going to eat, where you're going to eat at. But eventually, you're going to get back on that highway, and you're going to end up at the destination. So that is what I think, and that, in my experience, that is what it is. Like, everything happens for a reason. And people want to think they have free will. They can think that all they want, because they do to an extent. But in the grand scheme of it all, this has all been prophesized. It's all been put into place. And that's just my experience. So, like I said, you can get off on the exit, right? Let's say you get off to go eat at Chili's. And then you see something, for example, that road sign, Chili's is like, somebody's like did some graffiti on Chili's, and you think, oh, you don't think anything about it, right? Because it's just something silly, some random thing. Somebody put graffiti on Chili's, but you're still going to go eat at Chili's. And then there's a there's a Longhorn Steakhouse, a couple miles down the road. And then you go past this and you notice that you hear something about Chili's on the radio, like something just happened at Chili's on the radio with like debit cards. That was a thing with the debit cards. And then you're like, shit, I still want Chili's. But that's 2 signs right there telling you not to go eat at Chili's, that you need to go to Longhorn Steakhouse. So you start going to Chili's, and then they're doing road work right there on the exit, on the turn off to go into Chili's. So you have to sit there and wait in traffic to go to Chili's. And then, so that's 3 signs right there. That's 3 little signs right there that's saying don't go to Chili's. And then you hear on the radio something about Longhorn Steakhouse, something good about Longhorn Steakhouse, right? Like not the debit card thing, but like Longhorn, this is here, it just got voted the best steak in the Tri-Cities. And so that's a sign for you to go to Longhorn Steakhouse. You got 3 signs not to go to Chili's, 1 sign to go to Longhorn Steakhouse. So let's say that you still sit there in traffic, you're miserable, and in doing this, someone rear-ends your car, right? And that sets you back. It's a distraction. And so let's say that you went through this shit to go to Chili's. So you're like, fuck, we're going to Chili's. So you go to Chili's, you go in there, your food's bad. Some server said or did something that you didn't like. There was a customer drunk over there, and something, nothing crazy, but something little happens. And then you find out, that you have a friend or whoever that went to Longhorn Steakhouse. They went to Longhorn Steakhouse and they were doing some contest and they give this away or whatever. It doesn't matter about that. Like, let's say you were supposed to go to Longhorn Steakhouse and meet somebody. That person, you were supposed to meet them, and they would be be in your life, influence your life, help your life. But instead, you went to Chili's. Now, most people will see that and be like, would see the graffiti on the sign, would hear something bad about it on the radio, or had just heard something bad about it, or see that they were working on the turn to get there, and they would not really, they would just think this is coincidences. It's just life. That's what it's supposed to be. And I'm telling you, there's no such thing as coincidences. Everything is put in place and happens for a reason. And this is going to be counterintuitive into what a lot of people think, say, and feel nowadays, but that's just my experience. Now, that's what I mean by the signs. Like, if you follow the signs and you become conscious of the signs, and that's something you can do and have to do. You have to do it, but you can become conscious of it. You can become conscious of the signs. You can become conscious of, what you should be doing, the road you should be walking, the path you should be taking. Because, like I said, it's inevitable. You got to take that path. So, do you want to take the easy path or the hard path? That's your choice. So, that's just one example, and I can give greater examples. That was just one that I wanted to, I guess, kind of lay out so you could understand what I'm saying more, because later on I will come back and do more videos talking about signs and the path you should be taking. And then when it comes to constructive criticism, that is very, very crucial. Very crucial. Because let's say that you think you have everything figured out, right? Like, let's say that, we'll give another example. Okay, I'll give an example of someone I'm helping right now, or I'm still technically helping, but I'm about to not help anymore, because you can't help somebody that doesn't want to be helped. And I had him to the point where he was about to change his whole life, and he just slips up, and it's not the fact that he slips up, because people are going to slip up. It's the fact that you slip up and you blatantly lie to me about it, and it's the fact you just keep doing it. So, had this, we'll give an example. I had this guy down to, he was an addict. He went to a Suboxone clinic or a Subutex clinic or whatever to get clean. They put him on that, and it just got worse and worse from there. Like, I don't know. Suboxone and Subutex, something that needs to be cut out of the equation completely, because it's only for a select few people, and they overprescribe it. It's a money racket. It's what it is. But that's another subject for another day. When you get back to the point that, essentially what it was when I was holding this dude's hand and trying to get him through it and being super supportive, which I've always been supportive, but he was good. He was doing good. Then he started feeling bad a little bit, started feeling, of course you're going to feel bad. You're coming off drugs, dude. You're coming off drugs that you've been on for years. You're coming off physically addicting drugs. It's not like Coke where it's mental. This is physically addicting. Even though it's mostly mental, everything's mostly mental. That's one of the harder ones. You get to the point where, you feel bad, you're sick, and this and that. I completely understand. But when I see you making the wrong decisions and the wrong choices, and I understand, and I see where it's going because I've been down this road before myself, and I give you the constructive criticism to, hey, you may want to stay away from this person, stay away from that person. Look, I know you feel bad, but you need to get up and do something. You can't just lay in the bed all day. It's going to make it worse. Like, get up, let's go walking, let's do some yoga, let's do something, because it's going to get worse for you just sitting here. And it was at the point I knew, because detoxing, I mean, the first 3 days aren't that bad. Then the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh day is pretty rough. And then after that, it just slowly goes downhill. And I don't mean downhill I mean worse. I mean, it slowly, like, alleviates, the pain alleviates, and then it's all mental at this point. So he was like on day 7, and I was like, dude, 3-4 more days and you're good. Just, let's go do something. And I knew that it was also to the point that he was not hurting that bad, that it was mostly mental. And he didn't want to do it. And I told him, give him some constructive criticism. Started being a dick to me, to his wife, to his friends and family. And in that moment, I knew that I knew, I could see the writing on the wall. So I went back to trying to hold his hand a little bit. And me giving him that constructive criticism was an excuse for him to use again. Like, oh, well, and I don't want to get too far into the story, but I'm just giving you an example. Like, even though he knew that the constructive criticism I was giving him was true, he used that as an excuse to use again. He used that as an excuse to go off the handle. And he also, his ego and pride got in the way and shut me out, shut everyone else out, and said, you know what, we're going to do what I want to do, what I want to do. So this is what I'm saying. He knew that after a few days, his whole life would be better, right? And he didn't stop and take the time to think and say, this is what I've done, this is where I've came from, this is where I can go after this. I have came this far. And in that moment, he broke. And in that moment, the drugs took his soul. And in that moment, he found every excuse he could to use again. And in that moment, he took that constructive criticism that he knew was true and shut it out and let it make him Mr. Poopy Pants. And that's what I'm trying to get. Trying to get people to understand, is constructive criticism is amazing. You need it. You need it in life. Or what are you going to, or what? You just going to be that same stubborn person your whole life? You're going to be miserable your whole life? I would rather think of this as, put it in an analogy, right? Like, let's use a job as an analogy. Let's say you're working somewhere you're miserable at. You hate your job, right? But in order to find a better job, one that you want to do, one that you like doing, it's going to take time, effort, and dedication. But you're afraid to do that. You're afraid to take the step. So let's say that it would take 2 hours a day. When you get home from work, it would take you 2 hours a day for 6 months to get where you needed to be. But the fear and the arrogance and ignorance, sorry, it's just what it is, tells you, hey, you're afraid to do it. So you're like, man, this is, I know I want to do that, but I can't do it because you're afraid to do it. So would you rather... And then a lot of people say they don't have time, but 2 hours a day, come on. Like, you waste more time than that on YouTube. You waste more time than that watching TV. You waste more time than that playing video games. You waste more time than that doing silly stuff that doesn't matter. Right or wrong here. So, and see, now that, again, I caught myself coming across as preaching. I'm sorry. But it's true, right? It's true. So would you rather take the 2 hours for 6 months and better yourself? Now, this can be applied with a better job, losing weight, doing whatever you want to in life, really. So people say they don't have time, but they waste time. And time's something you're not going to get back. Time's always going to be here. As long as you're here, time will tick. Time will go. But there's also no such thing as taking the time back that you blew. So, try to use it wisely and accept constructive criticism. Because, again, with this analogy on this job thing, would you rather be miserable for, like, let's say that the path that you were determined to go down, like, you have a certain point to where eventually you're not going to have a choice over it, and something in your head's going to tell you, or it's going to be like, again, like something in your head's going to tell you or make you. And again, I know that's going to sound crazy to certain people, but I don't mean it in like a psychotic way or like a you're crazy way. You're like, oh, I did something stupid and the voices told me to do it. No, I mean, like, for the most part, very, very positive. And like, whatever you're supposed to do is how it's going to end. Like, it's predetermined. So eventually, if you were supposed to go on to be like, let's say you were meant to go on to be a CEO of a company. and it was decided by 50 you were going to do that. So you need about 4 years to do it, maybe 2 years to do it, 3 years to do it. Once you hit about 40, something's going to make you change inside. And I've told the story about what, it was like something took a hold of me and made me just get up one day and saying I wasn't doing this shit anymore and get my life back together. So did I have control over that? That's a question I had been wrestling with for a while, and I have realized that no, it was meant to happen. So that's all I'm saying, guys. Like, take the path where you don't have to suffer. I mean, suffering is necessary in life, but take it to where you don't have to continuously suffer. There's no point in it. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. It's Monday. Have a good week. I will come back on here. I do have to go do some work. I have to work, obviously, all this week, but I do have some meetings to go to talk in. So I'll come back on here and give you guys updates again. I'm sorry if these don't come across as great or professional. I know I've said it 30,000 times. If you made it to the end of this, I am going to start putting more effort in these. But like I said, as of now, these are just like practice for me. And so I hope someone can benefit from them.